A mother holds a child to her breast. A scene of tenderness, 7,000 years old. But there's a catch. The mother has the head of a lizard, and so does the infant. Southern Iraq, 1919. The heat melts your brain, sand grinds between your teeth. Harry Hall's expedition is digging into the mound of Tel al-Ubaid. They are looking for shards, remnants of daily life, boring pottery. But what they pull from the dust was meant to bring history to a halt. Officially, it's called the Ubaid culture, 5,000 years BCE, a time when the Sumerians hadn't even begun to build their ziggurats. And here's what's strange. The sculptor crafted these figures with frightening anatomical precision. The shoulders are human, the arms, legs, and torso, they're ours. But the heads, an elongated skull, slanted, almond-shaped eyes, often called coffee beans, a wide, lipless slit for a mouth. These are not human features. This is the face of a reptile. History textbooks immediately pull out a convenient label, fertility cult, or priests in ritual masks. It sounds reassuring. Safe. Stop. I understand when a shaman wears a mask to frighten the tribe or summon rain. That's theater. But look at the figurine of the infant. It's in its mother's arms. She is breastfeeding it. Do you seriously believe they put a ritual reptile mask on a nursing baby before feeding it? This isn't a mask. The sculptor wasn't fantasizing. They were documenting. They weren't trying to depict a symbol. They sculpted what they saw every day. A creature biologically compatible with us, with our body, but looking at the world through the eyes of another species. The anatomy of the figurines leaves no room for the costume theory. The neck transitions smoothly into the head, the muscles tensed to support that specific elongated skull. A mask adds volume, creates a step. Here, it is a single piece of flesh. And this is where the official story begins to fall apart. If these were not gods or spirits, but actual inhabitants of ancient Mesopotamia, where did they go? Civilizations don't vanish without a trace. Bones remain. DNA remains. But here, there is only silence. It's as if someone conducted a purge. In Iraq, we see the faces, but if we travel 3,000 kilometers east to China, we see something worse. There, they didn't just find strange faces. They found proof that someone tried to destroy the memory of these beings with fire and bronze. And what was unearthed in Sichuan province, Chinese archaeologists would have preferred to bury again. China is a nation of chronicles. For millennia, they recorded every sack of rice, every eclipse, every imperial decree. Order, control, history. But in Sichuan province, they found something the Chinese annals are silent about. And their silence is not accidental. 1929. A peasant digging a pit stumbles upon jade. Later, in 1986, archaeologists excavate this layer and freeze, because staring back at them from the earth are not Chinese people. Not even humans. San Xingdui. Imagine a bronze mask 1 meter and 38 centimeters wide. This is not a ritual ornament. It's an engineered structure weighing hundreds of kilograms. But it's not the weight that's terrifying. It's the facial features. The eyes. They are not almond-shaped. They are cylindrical. They protrude 16 centimeters from their sockets, like telescopes. The ears are enormous, flared, resembling locators. The mouth is stretched into an unnatural, predatory smile that reaches almost to the earlobes. Official science says, this is stylization, the artistic fiction of ancient masters. Stop. Fiction always draws on reality. A person cannot invent what they have never seen. They can only combine familiar elements. But in the culture of ancient China, there is nothing like this. Not before, not after. This style is alien. It came from nowhere and vanished into nowhere. And this is where it gets truly terrifying. The Sangxingdui artifacts were not carefully placed in a tomb like the Terracotta Army. No, they were killed. A layer of ash and soot tells us of temperatures reaching hundreds of degrees. The bronze heads were deliberately smashed, melted, deformed, and thrown into pits. This does not look like a sacrifice to the gods. Gods are revered. Gods are feared. This was an execution. Someone desperately wanted to erase the memory of these beings. Someone burned their images with such fury, as if they feared they might return. As if the very gaze of those cylindrical eyes was dangerous. You might say, a change of dynasty, a clan war. Let's assume so. But why did the victors destroy only the images of this type? Why didn't they melt down the precious bronze into weapons, as all pragmatic conquerors of that era did? Bronze was worth more than gold back then. But they chose to bury tons of metal in the ground, just to avoid seeing those faces. This wasn't a war for resources. This was the extermination of a biological species, or its masters. We see a pattern. In Iraq, reptilian figures. In China, technogenic masks with telescope eyes. Everywhere, traces of a high culture that doesn't fit into the evolution of Homo sapiens. And everywhere, a sudden, violent end. They were here. They ruled. And then something happened that made people destroy any reminder of them. But if the images could be burned, where did the originals go? Where are the physical bodies? Perhaps the answer lies not in a layer of ash, but where people usually don't look. Because when it gets too hot on the surface, any intelligent species seeks refuge in the same place, below. In 1992, a Chinese farmer decided to pump the water out of a pond in the village of Longyu. He thought he would find fish, but after 17 days of the pumps running, the water was gone. And it revealed an abyss that no official theory can explain. Let's go down. For 17 days, the pumps worked at their limit. The hum echoed throughout the village. The locals were waiting for fish, but when the water receded, the bottom didn't appear. Instead of silt, darkness was revealed. Imagine that moment. You're standing at the edge, expecting to see the bottom of a pond, but you're looking into a 30-meter-deep abyss. That's the height of a 10-story building. And this is not a natural cave. This is perfect geometry. Welcome to Longyu. 24 man-made grottos, 30,000 square meters underground. Official science says it's a quarry, or a water reservoir. It sounds logical, until you pull out a calculator. Let's do the math. The volume of excavated rock is 1 million cubic meters. In terms of weight, that's about 2.5 million tons of stone. To move such a volume, you would need an army of workers and logistics on the scale of the Great Wall of China. But there's a catch. Within a radius of hundreds of kilometers, there are no roads paved with this stone. No foundations, no embankments. Nothing. 2.5 million tons of matter simply vanished. Evaporated. You might say, they used it to build houses. Fine. But the Chinese bureaucracy is the most meticulous in the world. They recorded every sack of rice given to the emperor 3,000 years ago. A construction project of this scale is a national endeavor. It means taxes, worker deaths, years of labor. I checked the chronicles. Do you know how many mentions of the Longyou construction there are in ancient texts? 0. Not a single line. How can you hide a project that involves excavating 1,000,000 cubic meters of stone? Only if you build it in secret, or if it wasn't built by us. Go down, feel the cold and damp, and look at the walls. If thousands of slaves had chipped away at this with pickaxes, the marks would be chaotic. Blows of varying force, chips, irregularities. But here, the walls and ceilings are covered with grooves. Strictly parallel lines, uniform width, uniform depth, and everywhere the same angle of inclination, 60 degrees. This is not manual labor. This is a pattern. This is what the trace of a giant milling cutter looks like, removing rock layer by layer. The engineers who went down there with me all said the same thing. This is machine work. And it's work on a material harder than concrete. And here is where the official version finally dies. The partitions between the caves. They are only 50 centimeters thick, at a height of 30 meters. A half-degree error during excavation, and the wall would collapse or be pierced through. But there are no errors. The positioning accuracy underground, without GPS or lasers, is absolute. Why? Why such complexity? Officially, for beauty, or for quarrying stone. But quarrying stone while leaving intricate columns and thin walls is absurd. It's like mining coal by carving Gothic cathedrals out of the scene. Number. Form follows function. Longyou is not a quarry. Nor is it a temple. Temples have murals, statues. Here, there are bare, functional walls, covered in the marks of machinery. This is a bunker, or a storage facility, or a workshop. Someone carved 1,000,000 cubic meters of rock out of the planet, using technology we still don't have, and then flooded it with water to hide the evidence. But if Longyou is a cold, technological facility built to last for millennia, the next place we're going evokes very different emotions. There's no imperial scale or perfect milling cutter there. There's only fear. Because if they were building a base in China, then in Turkey, people were clawing into the rock in a panic, trying to escape something that was on the surface. 1963. Turkey, Nevşehir province. A local resident is renovating his house. One blow of a sledgehammer to the basement wall, and the masonry crumbles. But behind it is not earth. Behind it is darkness. A deathly cold and musty air pour from the opening. The man lights a lantern and sees a tunnel leading sharply down. He doesn't yet know that he has just discovered the entrance to the most massive bunker of the ancient world. Derinkuyu. This is not a cellar. This is an underground metropolis. 18 floors down, a depth of 85 meters, a capacity of 20,000 people, along with livestock and food supplies. Imagine the population of an entire town voluntarily descending into hell to live without sunlight. Official history offers a convenient version. It was a refuge for early Christians hiding from Arab raids or Roman persecution. It sounds logical, in a textbook. But the architecture of Derinkuyu argues with this version, and it argues fiercely. Look at the ventilation. 52 vertical shafts go down to a depth of 55 meters. This is not a makeshift burrow dug in a panic by refugees. This is a highly complex engineering project, requiring calculations of air pressure and gas circulation. An error of 1 degree in the slope, and 20,000 people on the lower levels would suffocate from carbon dioxide within a day. But they didn't suffocate. The system still works. And now for the most terrifying part, the doors. At every strategic level, the passages are blocked by huge stone millstones, 1.5 meters in diameter, weighing up to 500 kilograms. These doors have one design feature that is deeply unsettling. They cannot be opened from the outside, in any way. There are no handles, no grooves. They can only be closed from the inside. This is not a defense against an army that has come for tribute. This is a complete seal. Whoever built this was not planning on negotiations. They were planning to survive the end of the world. Skeptics will say, well, they were hiding from war. Stop. Before you say that caves are just a local tradition, let's change the environment. Let's go to a place where a human cannot physically survive without technology. 2003. Israel, the Sea of Galilee. A team of researchers is conducting a routine sonar scan of the bottom. They are looking for fish, sediment, maybe ancient boats. But a spot appears on their screens that shouldn't be there. It's not a rock. It's not a random pile of stones. It's a perfect geometric structure. Divers descend into the murky green water. Visibility is near zero. The cold chills them to the bone. A flashlight beam snatches basalt boulders from the darkness. And then it becomes clear. Geology ends here. Architecture begins. A giant cone lies on the bottom. Let's do the math. The diameter of the base is 70 meters. The height is 10 meters. This is not a small hill. This is a monumental structure. The material is unworked basalt. Boulders up to 1 meter long. The masonry is dry, without mortar. But the most terrifying part is the mass. Scientists have done the calculations. The weight of the structure is 60,000 tons. Let me put that in perspective. 60,000 tons is the weight of a modern battleship with a full complement of ammunition. It's twice as heavy as Stonehenge. And this is where the official version springs a leak, below the waterline. Because there are only 2 ways this object ended up on the bottom, and both of them break history. Option 1. It was built underwater. Imagine the logistics. The Bronze Age, or even earlier. You need to transport 60,000 tons of stone to the middle of a lake. On what? Reed rafts? And not just dump them haphazardly, but arrange them into a perfect cone with precise geometry. Underwater. Without scuba gear. Without cranes. This is an engineering absurdity. Even today, such a project would require special equipment and millions of dollars. To attribute this to a cult is to admit that the ancients had technologies they, according to textbooks, could not have possessed. Option 2. And this is what archaeologists are now leaning towards, trying to save face. It was built on land. Sounds logical? Wait, if it was built on land, it means there was no water here. It means the shoreline of the Sea of Galilee was hundreds of meters farther out and tens of meters lower. This implies that the climate and geography of the region were completely different. Not just a bit drier. It was another world. But we are told that the water level here has been stable for the last few thousand years. This basalt cone is a silent witness. It screams that our chronology is wrong. Either this object is much older than we are allowed to think, and it existed before the global rise in water levels, or their technology allowed them to build on the seabed as easily as we build sandcastles. Dr. Yitzhak Paz of the Israel Antiquities Authority and Ben-Gurion University stated it plainly. This is definitely man-made, and we don't know who built it. 60,000 tons of basalt. hidden beneath a mass of water. Why? It's not a dwelling, it's not a fort. The cone shape is useless for defense. It's a marker. Or a lid. And one more detail that is deeply unsettling. Several kilometers from the shore, at a depth where the pressure already pushes on your temples. Stop. Take a step back. Move away from the map of Israel. Look at the big picture. We are not looking at scattered mysteries. We are looking at a system. And if you connect these dots, it gets truly cold. We have two types of sites. The first type, the faces. Iraq, 5,000 years BCE. Tel al-Ubaid, figurines with lizard heads. Not masks, but anatomy. China, San Xingdui, bronze cylinder eyes that have nothing in common with Asian epicanthic folds. These are the ones who do not look like humans. The ones whose images were either cast in complex bronze or sculpted from clay with manic precision. The second type, the shelters. China, the Longyu Caves. 1,000,000 cubic meters of rock excavated by a milling machine. Turkey, Derinkuyu, 18 floors down, stone doors weighing 500 kilograms. These are the places where humans hid. Official science says these are different eras, different cultures, different religions. You might say, the dates don't match. But here's where that version breaks down. You can't date stone. Radiocarbon dating only works on organic material. If a shepherd builds a fire in a cave 3,000 years after it was carved by an unknown machine, an archaeologist will date the charcoal from the fire. They will give you the date of the fire, not the date of the cave. The chronology that underpins our textbooks hangs by a thread. Now look at the facts without the dates. In one place, we see beings who possess technology we cannot replicate. The casting of San Xingdui, the basalt work in Galilee. In another place, we see people frantically digging into stone. You don't build an underground city for 20,000 people to store grain. You don't create 60-meter-deep ventilation shafts for a cult. And, most importantly, you don't install half-ton doors that close only from the inside. The mechanics of that lock leave no other interpretation. This wasn't a defense against nomadic raiders. Nomads leave after a week. The infrastructure of Derinkuyu was designed for years of autonomous living. This was not a tribal war. This was an evacuation. The pattern forms a terrifying mosaic. Everywhere there are traces of high technology, disc saws, polygonal masonry, metal smelting, and everywhere, a total silence in the historical records. Chinese chroniclers recorded every imperial sneeze, but forgot to mention the excavation of 1,000,000 tons of rock? No. They didn't forget. They didn't know, or they were afraid to write. We are used to thinking of ourselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the masters of the planet, who gradually developed from digging sticks to smartphones. But these sites suggest the opposite. We are not the masters. We are the survivors. We are the descendants of those who managed to reach Derinkuyu, those who managed to roll the stone disc shut from the inside. While on the surface, to the sound of something that made the earth tremble, what would later be called a war of the gods was taking place. And if these bunkers are empty, it means that at some point, it became safe to come out. Or so it seemed. The Ubaid reptilians nursing their infants, the burned and buried masks of San Xingdui, 1,000,000 cubic meters of vanished stone in the Longyu Caves, and 18 floors of fear underground in Derinkuyu. Put these facts on one table. Official science calls them disparate cults. We are told, here they prayed for a good harvest, there they hid from bandits, and here they just got creative with bronze. But the numbers and the engineering scream otherwise. The pattern is global. In different parts of the planet, separated by thousands of kilometers, we see traces of the same panic, and traces of the same force they were trying to escape. Stoneworking technologies we can barely replicate today. Traces of disc cutters, polygonal masonry that withstands earthquakes, and a total, absolute silence in written sources. In the next 2 or 3 years, we will enter a new phase. LiDAR technology is becoming cheaper and more precise. The scanning of the Amazon rainforest and the ocean floors has already begun. And then, hiding these anomalies behind the phrase ritual object will become impossible. The map is filling up. There are no more blank spots left to sweep inconvenient facts under. I understand why the official narrative clings so tightly to the fertility cult explanation. It's convenient. It's safe. It places humanity at the center of history as the master of its own destiny. I would like to believe that too. But when I look at a 500-kilogram stone door that was rolled shut in terror from the inside, I understand. Safety was an illusion. We are looking at the ruins not of temples, but of bunkers. And what we mistake for gods, judging by the anatomy of the statues, has a very indirect relationship to the human race. The official history of humanity is a history of amnesia. We didn't forget these events because too much time has passed. We forgot because remembering was too terrifying. Period. At this point, the version of progressive development from primitive to civilized dies completely. Check the sources in the description. Don't take my word for it. Verify it yourself. Compare the eye slits on the Sanxing Dui masks and the Ubaid figurines. Look at the milling marks in Longyu. Save this video before the algorithms deem it controversial content. And be sure to subscribe. In the next episode, we will analyze the genetic trace they might have left in our blood. And the most uncomfortable question for last: if they were here, possessing such power and technology, what makes us think they ever left for good?